and players smiling.
But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prizepicks.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Big Three NBA podcast. Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani, Lunis. Let's just get right into, well, before we get into it, actually, I gotcha. I want to remind you all that you are listening to the Big Three NBA podcast, which is part of the CLNS Media Network, which is where you can find, of course, our podcast and so much other great Celtics podcasts, past, present. In addition, there's a ton of Celtics content like the Garden Report, which they usually go live immediately after every Celtics game, win or lose, home or away. So if you're into the Boston Celtics and all that's happening surrounding the team, CLNS Media Network has you covered. Okay, now we'll get into it.
Gotcha. Gary is not amused. Kwani, it amused me, but Gary clearly is not amused.
Because I was trying to get right into the rundown, and I was like, wait, I have to remind people. So that's where I had to catch myself. But Game 4 of the NBA Finals, the Thunder win. They're taking, now at this point, I have a 3-2 lead series. Whatever. Yeah. Jalen Williams, 40 points. SGA, 31 points and assists. Pascal Siakam, 28 points for the Pacers. And Halliburton with 4 points for all from the free throw line in that game. But let's talk about Jalen Williams from the top. What would you guys say makes him so impactful or has made him so impactful this series so far?
Balling. I mean, he is the last couple games. He's just been really looking like the all-star player that he showed himself to be this season. You know, his ability to score, rebound, get others involved, you know, and his defense has always been pretty strong. So I went back and looked at a story Miriam Fader did on him back in January. Because that was one of the first times anyone had done anything relatively, you know, deep dive like on him. And that was the big takeaway that I came away from that. And we kind of saw it in Game 5 was just he figures out a way to impact the game in so many different ways that he's almost impossible to truly prepare for and shut him down because he has the ability to do a lot of things at a really high level. It's just a matter of can he put those things together collectively and consistently, and he's been doing that lately. I mean, that 40 piece he put on Indiana, it looked real easy. I mean, he got to all the spots he wanted to, made the mid-range shots, hit a couple threes, you know, attacked off the dribble in transition. He did everything he wanted to do in that game. And the only question about him at this point isn't so much about what he can do, but can he do it consistently?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Williams is the perfect number 2 to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I just think he's just been really aggressive. I mean, if you look at he took 25 shots in 35 minutes, so he was definitely putting them up. He only took 5 threes. He hit 3 of them, 9 for 12 from the free throw line, added 6 rebounds, 4 assists, a block, and only had 1 turnover in those 35 minutes, plus 14 for his 40 points. So just a very efficient night. You know, he's a guy who can score many different ways. They call him a 3-level scorer. He can score in the paint, score at the mid-range, and score from the 3. And I just think it was just one of those games. It was his night. And, you know, he made big plays down the stretch. He can also play defense. You know, he's that perfect kind of number 2 guy. I mean, you know, it's a perfect situation for, you know, Oklahoma City, you know, another guy who's homegrown, you know, 12th overall pick 3 years ago. And this guy's already turned himself into an all-star. And that's the thing. You know, he was 21 when he came into the league. So he was polished and was a 3rd year through at Santa Clara. And he has developed into exactly what the Thunder wanted. And that's you know, an all-around scorer, a good defender, just a great, versatile all-around player. And that was the key to their victory. We'll see what happens in Game 6, whether Indiana can fight back and try to force a Game 7. But I just think he scores in so many different ways, and he has the size to get to the rim. He can also shoot, make it off the glass, you know, those floaters, and also shoot from the 3. So just a great all-around game from Jalen Williams. And, you know, you drop a 40 piece in the NBA Finals, that's saying a lot. And we'll see what happens next. But, you know, it was just one of those games you just wish Indiana would wake up. Like, they just keep falling behind, and then they make it a game, and then they got to be perfect. It was just a lot like game 2, where they try to make it a game, and then once they made it a game, more turnovers, and then suddenly the Thunder going like an 11-0 run, and it's from 4 to 15, and the game is over. I'd like to see Indiana punch first, take the lead, and then anything can go into Game 7. We all know that. So I like Indiana's chances of forcing a Game 7.
Gary, just to kind of piggyback off of that, I thought that the difference between Game 5 and Game 2 is that I thought Game 2, I thought Indiana kind of let them off the hook, frankly. I thought Game 5, Oklahoma City would not allow Indiana to let them off the hook. I thought, like of all the games we've seen so far in the finals, I thought Game 5 maybe was the best impactful defensive game Oklahoma City had. I mean, they looked like absolute we've talked about them from the standpoint of being historically speaking, one of the greatest defenses that we've seen. They looked like it. They looked the part in Game 5. I thought that the activity, and little things like Caruso deflecting a pass in a passing lane, and him and Pascal Siakam both going for a loose ball at the same time, but he comes up with it, Pascal doesn't. Little things that they were able to do that amplify what they do defensively, I thought was huge in that game. And it got me to thinking about the Celtics as I'm watching them play. And when we talk about, Jaylen, it got me to thinking about the other Jaylen that the Celtics are familiar with, and how in that number 2 role, how we saw that play out last year in the finals. And it seems that obviously their impact is somewhat different. It doesn't change the fact that they're arguably as impactful as anyone in the series. And I'm just curious, Gary, because I know Jaylen is your boy. What are Brown, not Williams, Brown, okay? What similarities do you see between those two, other than the fact that they're stepping their game up on the biggest stage? But, I mean, do you see parallels between how they play? And if so, what might those be?
Yeah, I think Jalen Williams is a kid who he's just always seems to be at the right place at the right time. He can knock down that 3-point. I think he's a better 3-point shooter than Jaylen Brown is, and he can get to the rim. And I just think Jalen Williams' feel for the game is just he's always just seems to be right where he needs to be, and he plays well off of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and that's and Brown and Tatum. It took a while for them to play well off each other, but they play well off each other. I mean, I think Jaylen Brown is a little bit of still more plays off his athleticism. But I think they're somewhat similar players. Jalen Williams a little bit shorter, he's 6'5", but the guy can use his size to get to the rim, and then he uses the glass. I really like the way he uses the glass, and doesn't always have to try to dunk on you. He can just take that 8-10 footer, bank shot, things like that. So I think that Jalen Williams might be a little bit more polished of an offensive player at this stage of his career. But I think both of them, in terms of the duos, play well off each other. They don't intersect. And I just think that's something that Williams and Gilgeous-Alexander have learned over their 3 years of playing together now. That's not easy to learn, right? You didn't see the game last night and think, wow, Jalen Williams taking a lot of shots out of Gilgeous-Alexander's hand. It was just his night. And then Gilgeous still had 31, so it wasn't like he had a bad game, but Jalen Williams just played in the flow of the game. He took, it wasn't like he took 40 shots. I think he took 25 shots. So I think there's definitely similarities, but Jalen Williams is just a guy who's kind of figuring out his own kind of way to fit in. And props to SGA for being more, even though he took 21 shots and scored 31 points, he also had 10 assists. So He played a little bit more of a facilitator. And that does remind me of Tatum. Just like, okay, I'm not going to take 35 shots tonight. I'm going to take 21, which is, a little about around his average or whatever. But I'm going to be a distributor. So he led the team in assists, and that's why they won.
Facts.
So going back to the Pacers, they're back at home Thursday night, Juneteenth actually. But Tyrese Haliburton, his status is still not really sure. He's been dealing with that right strained calf, and clearly it's been affecting his performance. But what is your concern level for his health right now? And that being said, who should step up if he's not available for Game 6?
Ooh, who you got, Gary?
I mean, I think he's going to play. I think you have to probably have to cut his leg off for him not to play. But the question is, they're going to have to figure out somebody who can score. And I thought McConnell was very good. McConnell was very good in game 5. Do you play him more minutes? He scored 18 points in 22 minutes. Like, do you play him more than the 22 minutes? Him and, Indiana is just, I mean, it's like they're blowing this series to me. They blew game 4. It's very reminiscent of the Celtics in 2022, if you guys remember, where the Celtics had that 5-point lead with like 5 minutes left, and then Steph Curry went crazy in game 4, and the Celtics could have taken a 3-1 lead. Instead, they lost that game and then never won another game in the series. They lost 5 and 6. And this is reminding me of Indiana. You got, I think they had a 4-point lead with 3 minutes left, and they didn't score another field goal, and their offense just shut down. And I'm just looking at the numbers, and it wasn't only Halliburton. Halliburton was terrible, but you also had Benedict Mathurin, 2 for 11, 7 points, 2 more missed free throws. Andrew Nembhard, 7 points in 36 minutes. He was a -12. Like, it's just like Obi Toppin was 1 for 5 from the 3-point line. Like, Siakam showed up and nobody else really did, and McConnell. And they're going to need McConnell to be big, especially if in Mathurin. Those are the 2 guys that have to step up scoring wise. If, let's say, Halliburton says, okay, I don't have the push, I'm not going to try to be the scorer. He took 6 shots, so he wasn't obviously trying to score, and he took 4 of those were threes. But he did have 7 rebounds and 6 assists, right? So he did contribute. But if he's like, hey, I don't have the explosion to get to the rim and to get my shot off, I'm going to play distributor. It's going to have to be those 2 guys, McConnell, and it's going to have to be Mathurin's going to need to step up. Like, 2 for 11, it can't happen to Nembhard. Nembhard, saw him last year. We all saw him last year against the Celtics. He was money. And now it just seems like he's had his moments in this series, but I think we need to see a big Nembhard game. Like, he needs to step up.
Yeah, I mean, their role players definitely need to really bring a little bit more to the table. If Halliburton isn't able to go at all, or if he's limited, which I think he will be if he does play, that he will not be able to do the things that he's customarily used to doing. But the guy that I think has to step up, frankly, I think he's been stepping up this entire series, and he's going to have to find another gear to shift it into, I think, for them to win Game 6, is my man known as Spicy P, Mr. Spicy P himself. I'm putting my money on him to be the guy that has to step up, because, frankly, he's the one guy that I'm comfortable and confident, if I'm a Pacers fan, who can do that. He's literally been doing it this entire series. The only question to me now is, does he have another gear that he can shift into? Does he have the ability to give them a 40-piece, for example, the way that Jalen Williams, J-Dub gave OKC? I think he does, and I do think that they will force a Game 7. I think there are going to be lots of guys who are going to step up and certainly contribute to that. But to me, no one is going to be more important in that ability to advance and get another game under their belts than Spicy P. He has been, frankly, he's been the most consistent player for the Pacers this entire run. And they're going to need him to be even better than he's already been for them to force a Game 7, which, again, as Gary pointed out, strange things happen when there's a Game 7 on the line. You cannot go with what you just naturally anticipate is going to be how things will roll. I remember vividly when I was in Detroit, they had a Game 7 in Miami, which, if you've got a winner-take-all type game, that's the last place you think you're going to get a W in. And the Pistons went in there and won that game and went on to the finals from there. And so you just never know what can happen. You never know how folks are going to react to the pressure of a Game 7. And Gary pointed out, Indiana, they have given some games away that they probably shouldn't have, obviously, but there's still this sense that they got nothing to lose, that they weren't supposed to be here anyway. And to me, those are the dangerous teams in game sevens because they are going into it with the perfect mindset that we're just going to play because we ain't supposed to be here anyway. So even if we go out here and get smashed by 30, guess what? We weren't even supposed to be in position to get smashed by 30. So let's just play our ball. And if you're OKC, just the opposite. We're being pushed to a game 7 against a team that ain't even supposed to be here. And we were supposed to be here because we won 68 games. We've got the MVP. We've got all these other, and we're home. So if you're Indiana, that's all you want at this point. Get it to a game 7 because there will be undeniably more pressure on OKC than there will be in the Pacers to win that game.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. All right, let's look at roster construction, especially when you look at these two teams in the finals. Would you say that OKC and the way they're built is becoming the new norm? And if so, how could that potentially affect teams like the Celtics?
I think the way that they're built is how teams want to look. I mean, you want to have guys that from 1 through 10 you can throw out there and not feel as though there's going to be a significant let-off. But to me, the dirty little secret that teams don't want to talk about when it comes to roster construction is their front office making the right decisions. I mean, you look at this OKC team. Your best player, MVP, was what, 11th overall pick in his draft class? Your second best player, 12th overall pick. And you're the second. And the funny thing is, your second best player was a 12th overall pick in a draft where you had the number 2 pick. And your third best player is that guy, Chet. So, and you start looking at just the way that they have built this roster. They didn't build it because they had all these great high draft picks. They simply absolutely nailed the pick when their turn came up on the draft order. And that, to me, is what determines whether you can build a roster like this. Because we've seen lots of teams year after year after year find themselves in the lottery. And they're winding up with top 5, top 10 picks. And there would be like, of the top 10 players drafted, there'd be maybe 1 or 2 busts. And they inevitably would be the team that would draft that bust. And so is it because a player wasn't very good, or is it because you simply had poor evaluating or not great evaluating and giving this player a grade that you probably shouldn't have? Whereas another guy 2-3 spots later was probably the one you should have drafted. So I think the way OKC is built is how lots of teams envision themselves wanting to have a roster like that. But the problem that they just will not accept and embrace is the fact that the reason their roster isn't good is because they don't do a good job at building that roster. I mean, I look at the way that Brad Stevens has built the Celtics roster. You look at the way OKC has built their roster. You look at Indiana, they took a very slow but steady consistency standpoint, and they got a bunch of guys who are like second-round picks, undrafted guys. I mean, and the reason they are where they are is because they absolutely hit on those guys either when they drafted them or when they traded for them. Hell, Aaron Nesmith was considered by many a bust in Boston. He was like a late lottery pick. I think he was a 14th overall pick. Someone who didn't quite shoot the ball as well as we thought he was going to shoot at this level. And then we started to learn that he's not a bad defender. And then Indiana was like, no, he's actually a pretty damn good defender. Let's lean into that as his calling card. And then we'll do that whole 3-point shooting stuff down the stretch. And we've seen him. He has the ability to go Steph Curry for like 3-4 minutes on any given game. We saw him do that in a major, come from behind win for them. So much of this is about how you are able to assess the available participants in the whole draft free agency process. And I just think most NBA teams screw it up. It's not the players that are bad. It's your assessment of them and their fit with your franchise. That's where the problems will arise.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is an example, these two teams, of how it's a great example for smaller market teams of how to build their roster. But like, unfortunately, again, you catch me on a bad day because I agree with Sherrod. And unfortunately,
2 weeks in a row.
I know this is not going well for me.
Gary is acquiring wisdom right before our eyes, but like most young folks and not so young folks, he's struggling to embrace the wisdom that he is acquiring. But that's okay.
We're struggling. Struggle is the right word. So I think, like Sherrod said, you have to be better. You have to be better managed. You have to be better. You have to be the bad teams are bad not because they're playing in a small market. They're bad because they're poorly managed. You look at the Charlotte Hornets. You look at the Sacramento Kings. You look at all these teams that have had a plethora of lottery. Look at all the lottery picks Orlando has had over the last 8. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony. What was the other guy's name?
Jonathan Isaac, my man.
Cole. Yeah, Jonathan Isaac. Like tons of guys just running in and out, and you haven't even made the second round. All those dudes. Like, and now they're finally starting to get in. I'm sure we'll talk about the Desmond Bane trade, but it's just like that's mismanagement. You got all these top 5 and top 10 picks. You got to hit on these guys, especially when teams aren't running and brothers aren't running to go down to Orlando. Like, this ain't Shaq and Penny. Like, dudes are not trying to run down to Orlando and play for what I'm saying? They're going to have to get their players homegrown, just like people aren't going to Oklahoma and people aren't going to Indiana. But they're in the finals because they drafted well. And like Sherrod said, they made that trade for J. Gilgeous-Alexander. They drafted Jalen Williams in a draft. When you draft 12th, anything goes when you draft 12th, right? That's a skill to hit on a 12th pick. Like I said, Gilgeous-Alexander, if we was going to redraft now, would not be the 11th overall pick, right? I mean, we could look at it. I mean, and you get guys like an Aaron Wiggins and a Cason Wallace, and we talk about the Isaiah Joe, and like you get guys out of the woodwork and you work them in Kendrick Williams and the other Jalen Williams. Like that's putting together a roster. And none of those dudes are making $5 billion. None of those dudes are max guys except Siakam and now obviously Halliburton. But the rest of that supporting cast was built the same with both teams. And you've got to hit on these picks because this new second apron does not allow you to put 3 $50 million guys on your roster as max players and sign guys off the street or sign guys out of the woodwork, to max deals and go, okay, this is our team. Like you're going to have to work harder as a GM to build teams and to get young talent, guys who can come off the bench and help you. And that's what these teams have proven. Now, it's not always rosy. Remember, Oklahoma City had some down years. There was a reason they got the number 2 pick. There was a reason why, because they were down for a while and they didn't make the playoffs. They were living in the lottery for a minute, and they were also taking a bunch of bad contracts. We all know Kemba Walker. We all know they took Al Horford. They took Chris Paul. They took guys and then turned those into draft picks and all those assets to be able to build this team. So sometimes you got to take an L eventually in the short run to take a win in the long run. That's what these teams have done. And if you're trying to, which I said, you look at Charlotte, you look at Atlanta, you look at some of these teams, Portland, Utah, these teams that get these constant lottery picks and these constant top 8 and 10 picks, and they botch them. And these dudes are on the street playing for other teams, or they're in the G League, or they're overseas now. I mean, you can't. This is a message. Don't botch your drafts. Do not botch your drafts. The Celtics won a championship because they drafted well and they made trades. Now, giving up Neesmith is obviously something they regret, but it got, Brogdon ended up turning to Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday helped them win a championship. But they also drafted Peyton Pritchard. Obviously, they scored on both Tatum and Brown. You want to look at who do we need to ask who was taken before Tatum? The 2 picks, Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How's that working out? Right? So it's a tough skill. Like you look at the draft and you look at the 18 draft. Luka wasn't the number 1 overall pick. Luka wasn't the number 2 pick. Right? It was Trae Young and Luka were 3 and 5. They got traded for each other. Marvin Bagley got taken ahead of Luka. DeAndre Ayton was a number 1 overall pick in that draft.
Oops, my bad.
Yeah, like that is a decision that botches your franchise for 15 years. If Sacramento takes Luka, where are they now? Right? Sacramento took Marvin Bagley Jr. And I'm not, hey, he's a pro. He's going to be in the league for 10 years. You can't, he's going to get a pension. He's never going to make an all-star team. Now he's in Memphis, like he's a guy. Like he's just a guy. But, and so not down on Marvin Bagley Jr., but let's be honest, even if Sacramento took Trae Young, like neither of those guys were the number one pick in that draft. Tatum should have been number one in his draft in 17. Markelle Fultz out the league. Lonzo Ball's on his third team. So, like, it's not an exact science. And then draft is next week, and these bad teams, and if you look at, and we can talk about, and I know Sherrod will smile brightly. Sherrod's Detroit Pistons finally got it right. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Durant, Isaiah Stewart. They have drafted well for the first time in decades, because they have drafted. Oh God. Oh hell.
Really, the foam finger.
The foam finger. Oh. Yeah,
Pistons foam finger on deck.
Turn your black card, Sherrod. Turn your black card.
Yikes.
It's the Detroit Pistons, Garrett. Does it really get more black card than the Detroit? Oh, no.
I think you get your black card for being a Pistons fan.
Yeah, that's true, maybe. But you look at the Pistons, and the Pistons are winning with a lot of now. They took Killian Hayes. That didn't work out. There's other guys that didn't work out. You're not going to go 100%. But this is Indiana and Oklahoma City are examples of building your rosters the right way and making good decisions in the draft and in the second round too, right? Andrew Nembhard, second round pick, Aaron Wiggins, second round pick. Like, these guys were not on anybody's board in the first round. You pick a guy that can help you, that'll eventually give you a good pro. These are what these two teams have done.
Facts.
So this week started with a big trade that we're going to talk about in just a second. But for those of you that are still listening, you have won the gift of listening to me ask you to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review.
You better talk that talk. You better talk that talk.
We appreciate you. Thank you. But for those that are watching the show on CLNS, go ahead, hit that like button, and subscribe to the Celtics All Access YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Celtics content on a regular basis. Also, make sure you're turning on those notifications so that you know the instant a new video drops. But yes, Orlando, they trade for Desmond Bane, and everyone on the internet freaks out. But let's just talk about the Celtics. Like, how does this not only affect the Eastern Conference, but also specifically the Celtics being a potential contender, at least in the next 2 seasons?
What you got, Gary?
I think it helps Orlando short term. I don't, for the life of me, understand why you give up 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane. I don't get that. I like Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane's a good player. Averaged 19 points a game. It still upsets Celtic fans that the Celtics traded that pick to Memphis, and that ended up being Desmond Bane after he was taking 4 picks after Peyton Pritchard. Another landing well in the draft and getting a guy who's a very good player in Desmond Bane. But, I understand. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had a bad year. He was supposed to be the 3-point shooter that they were hoping. He wasn't. And then Cole Anthony lost his role and just looked kind of lost in that Celtic series. Maybe he just needed a fresh start, and maybe Memphis will be a good place for those 2 guys. But 4 first-round picks, and the dude ain't made an all-star team. Like, the Celtics, I don't know. The Celtics like, well, shoot, we want 8 first-round picks for Drew. Like, what's going on here? Like, But first, Mikal Bridges and Desmond Bane have not made an all-star team, and both have garnered 9 first-round picks. Like, that's insane. Like,
Gary, in the words of our friend Dale Davis, world ain't right.
Like, so I know why Memphis traded him. People are like, oh, Memphis blowing it up. If you ask me to trade my number 3 player for 4 first-round picks and 2 other dudes, hey, homeboy, I'll call you Uber. I'm calling him Uber Black to get over Uber XL, get to the airport. Bro, I like you. We good. I want to keep you, but 4 first-round picks, 2 pick swap, and 2 dudes, 2 other players, established NBA players. Are you serious? People are like, Memphis should blow it up now. There's a sign of no. It's a sign like they got an offer they couldn't refuse. It's a Godfather. Like they look at like Memphis folks is like, what? Oh, okay. Like, you know, somebody 4 first rounders, 4, not 2. 2 people would have been like, well, that's a lot. That's a lot. 4?
Number of the day is 4.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So anyway, like I think teams are looking at the East, Orlando, and they're saying, and especially in Sherrod's Pistons, are saying, listen, the Celtics are going to be down. The Knicks don't even have a coach yet. Oh God. Cleveland, we don't know what they're going to do in the playoffs. They're kind of pretenders at this point. Why not them? Why not us? That's what they're saying. The East is wide open. And Indiana, do you expect Indiana to play this well next year and go to the finals? They'll be favorites to probably, not favorites in the East, but they'll be high odds for them to get out of the East. I mean, they'll be one of the 3 or 4 teams people might pick, but you're not saying, oh man, this is a dynasty in the making. Like, you're thinking maybe things worked out really well for them and they'll be a contender. But Orlando and especially Detroit are saying, like, it's our time. We can make that jump. I see why you made the trade. I don't see why you get did the Memphis GM say, nah, 2 first rounders? Nah, we need 4. Like who negotiated this deal? It just seemed like the Memphis dude got his cell and like hit mute and was like, do you believe this mugs are offering like hold up. Hold on 1 second, let me get back to you or collaborate with my man, these fools offering us 4 first rounders and 2. I'm like, this fool tripping. We'll accept the deal. I guess so. We're reluctant.
He packing Bane's bags for him.
Exactly. Like, are you serious? People are like, Memphis is this is a sign they're blowing it up. This is a sign they're trying to get assets. Like, you know what they can do? You do with 4 first round picks, especially when you trade.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so anyway,
they're building.
I think the East is wide open, and teams are thinking and looking at the East in the East and saying we could be the Indiana of next year.
Yeah.
I think for Orlando, they're looking at this from the perspective of what do we lack that could potentially get us over the hump? And once you assess what that is, then it's like, are there significant barriers beyond that keeping us from getting to the conference finals or even to the NBA finals? And the answer is no. I mean, think about this Orlando team. They defend as well as any team you'll find in the Eastern Conference. They've got their franchise player. They had a slew of injuries this year that, if we're being honest and keeping it 100, they're probably a top 3, top 4 team in the East if they had better help. When you add a guy like Baines, who I think his worst season shooting the 3 was like 38%, that's the bad Desmond Bane, 38%. You add him to the mix, and all of a sudden, even if he has a typical season, you're probably looking at 5 to 10 more wins because he's going to get you over the hump in a number of close games that you would otherwise lose. And so I'm not crazy about the fact that they gave up as many assets to get him. Like, I think 4 picks is excessive. 2 to me would have felt fair because 2 would have been 1 more than you probably wanted to if you're Orlando, but 2 to get the deal done and add someone who was going to bring tremendous value to your team. And if you're Desmond Bane, I mean, it's like getting that, it's like being on the Titanic and someone says, hey, bro, we got this life raft over here on the sunny side of the island. If you want, I'm good. Jumps in. He's off. Memphis is not going anywhere of significance anytime soon other than the lottery. Bane, meanwhile, comes to a team where he has a tremendous amount of value. He has a clear and undeniable role. And frankly, he's a guy that you could see him putting up numbers and being in the all-star conversation this year if they're winning a lot of games and he's putting up numbers. So there's a lot of positives for Orlando. There's a lot of positives for Bane. And if you're the Celtics, this is not great because this becomes another team that on paper can legitimately move ahead of you in the standings. When you look at, again, and I'm looking at Orlando with their relatively healthy and they've got their core guys intact. They're as good, if not better, than what I think the Celtics will look like. Because the Celtics that we've seen this past season, that will not be the Celtics we will see next season. They're not going to be as deep. They're not going to have as many top-tier talented players as we've seen. And knowing that they're probably going to take a step or two back, looking at what Orlando is doing by adding Bane, Orlando is going to be right there, if not ahead of the Celtics, and when all is said and done. And so if you're the Boston Celtics, you're paying attention to anything and everything that's going on. But certainly this is one of those deals that it's just too significant to ignore. And it's too impactful to pretend as if it doesn't matter because it does. Orlando is a better team because of this deal. And as Gary alluded to, it does take away from your future a little bit by giving up so many key assets. But if we're having this conversation a year from now and Orlando is in the finals or Orlando got to the conference finals, they will absolutely believe that it was worth it because that would have put them in a position that, frankly, moves them closer towards their goal, which is to win the title. And whether, Desmond can put them over the top, no one knows that for sure. But he definitely makes them better. And if they're able to be better when it matters the most, which is the playoffs, this is going to be a deal that they'll look back on and feel good about. That being said, before we go any further, wanted us to just give a quick shout out to our good friends at Prizepicks, which is, again, you can cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prizepicks, and don't miss your chance to just add your favorite players from court to Prizepicks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. You can mix and match players, projections for different sports such as baseball, basketball, hockey, esports, you name it, they got it. And with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks, which is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. And again, it's the best place to win cash while watching your favorite players play. How do you get in? It's really simple. You just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. Again, you download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game.
All right, let's go around the league a little bit more before we close out. And the next topic of discussion, Kevin Durant and his future. What do you two think is a good fit for him playing-wise, and how does he or front office make that happen?
The best fit for him, and he don't want to do this, but damn it, he need to seriously think about it, is the damn Timber Pups. You telling me this team—
that would be good. That would be
Minnesota has been to the conference finals three times in their franchise history. Two of those three times were the last two seasons. It's clear you need someone to get you over the hump. Who better than Kevin Durant? And if Kevin says, well, you know what? I don't want to sign a long term with y'all. I just want to finish out this 1 year. Okay, we can do that because we literally want you for 1 year to get us over the hump. That is going to be your mission. You've got and obviously part of that will involve who they have to part with in order to make that happen. But I'm telling you right now, short of Anthony Edwards, I don't think there's anyone on that roster that you feel like adding Kevin Durant is not going to make you appreciably better, particularly when you've come as close as they have to, again, getting to the final stage, which is to win an NBA title. But Kevin has made it clear that that's not one of his preferred destinations. And, Phoenix has made it clear that while we value your opinion, Kevin, we're going to do what's best for the organization. And I do think that for them, when all is said and done, I do think Minnesota is going to put forth the most compelling offer, especially if, they're willing to throw in some picks and things like that. So I think that's the best landing spot for him if his goal is to win another title. Now, if his goal is to just to play on a pretty good team and have a pretty good season and make them a little bit better, Go to Miami. Go to Houston. Do that. But to me, Minnesota seems the team that's closest to benefiting significantly from what Kevin Durant does on a night-in, night-out basis.
Yeah, I think with Kevin Durant, the best place is probably San Antonio, but it sounds like the Spurs aren't one of the teams that are making trade offers for him. I think it sounds like Houston, Miami, and Minnesota. It seems like it would be a natural fit. And I think he wants to play with San Antonio. He went to the University of Texas at Austin, which is near San Antonio. Obviously, all-time great there in his 1 year. But, is a guy who is, always had, good Texas ties and always been welcome there. And the Spurs need, they need another vet on that team. That would seem to me to be the best place. But it sounds like, it could be Houston or it could be, and I agree with Minnesota sounds like a good place. I don't know what they would give up. I know Julius Randle, I think, has a team option. And, the Timberwolves could pick that up and send him and let's say a Jalen McDaniels there to even out the deal and maybe a draft pick or two, give the Suns two, frontline guys because that's what it's going to take. But it sounds like the Suns are also trying to get back what they gave up to Brooklyn for him, and I don't think that's going to happen. Kevin's a little older. Kevin has not been associated with winning since that playoff series against Milwaukee was with the Brooklyn Nets. So, will Kevin Durant immediately make you a championship team? And I think some teams are asking themselves that. I think depending on the supporting cast, the answer is yes. Depending on, I think we all know he's going to hoop. He's going to play probably 70 games of the 82. He's going to be in the lineup most nights. You just got to, keep him healthy. I know he's had the leg and the injuries, the calf injuries and the Achilles over the years. He's had some knickknacks and stuff, some little injuries, but this is a guy who's gonna on every night be ready to play and be a professional, and every team could use that. But I think San Antonio is the best place. But it sounds like Sherrod said, maybe try to convince him that Minnesota will work. I mean, I think it's a situation like maybe with Kevin Garnett, you had to convince him that Boston was the best place after years in Minnesota. Just sometimes guys have to be convinced. I know Kevin probably doesn't want to play in Minnesota and, the weather and all that, but you played a couple years, the last few years in Phoenix. The weather's great, but y'all ain't winning. So what you want? You want good weather or you want a championship, and I think Houston, it sounds like Houston is at kind of in the uncertainty area of like, do we really want to give up Jalen Green? And do we really want to give up another young guy? Can we run it back and hope those guys, with Ime, another full year of Ime Udoka, can we run it back and really be a threat with the same guys? Or, or do we need to shake things up to get Kevin Durant for 1 year or maybe two? Like, I think Houston's kind of in that, we need something, but we're not sure we want to give up enough to get Durant, or do we just need another vet? So that should be interesting.
Okay, and finally, let's talk about New York just a little bit. So you two will take your pick. If you had to pick one coach for the Knicks between Mike Brown, Taylor Jenkins, or Mike Malone, who would it be and why?
Ooh, I know who I'm picking, but Gary, who you got?
I would say Mike Malone. I like Mike Malone. He's a New York guy. I think things just kind of went sour real fast in Denver. But I think he's a good coach who deserves another job. I don't know if New York's a good fit for any coach at this point. That's a dysfunctional organization. Mike Brown, no, I think Mike's kind of on the like been fired. Like, you're hiring Mike Brown for 2 to 3, it's going to eventually turn sour. It turned sour in Sacramento. It turned sour in LA. It turned sour in Cleveland. Like, it's eventually going to turn sour with Mike Brown. Like, it'd be like hiring Sherrod's close friend, Mike Woodson, who, talk
about Woody.
Who did coach the Knicks. Eventually things are not it's going to turn out It's like signing Jimmy Butler. It's like some of these guys, eventually, it's probably not going to work out for the best. And so I think the best shot would be Mike Malone. I like Taylor Jenkins. I kind of don't know if he's ready for that New York market after coming from Memphis. Right. I think he's more of a small town coach. What I mean by that is a team, a smaller market team that he could just, he doesn't have a big name. No one knows where he came from. He did a solid job in Memphis, and I thought, we'll see how that goes, whether that was the right decision to fire him. But I think he's more of a guy who should take over for a smaller market team. I think Mike Malone is the guy.
No, I would normally. I think Taylor Jenkins has a lot of upside, and I think he's a really good coach. But he would just get absolutely devoured in that market, and I just don't think he's ready for that. I like Mike Brown, but I got to go with Gary on this one and go with Malone, and in large part because of his familiarity with that neck of the woods. The one concern I have about Malone is that he's not the kind of coach that's just going to bite his tongue when he sees some BS going around. And I don't know how long he's going to be able to hold that job if things go a little bit squirrely and people are looking around for someone to blame. And he's just like, don't blame me. I didn't put this roster together. I could absolutely see him going off like that. And then next thing you know, him and Leon Rose going to have issues. And then him and Dolan are going to have issues. And then next thing you know, Mikey Malone is out of a job. So I don't know whether his temperament is right for that Knicks organization, because as Gary pointed out, and it was spot on, it is an absolute cluster, most days. And a guy like Mike Malone is his straight no chaser shooter. And I've always liked that about him, and I just don't know if that would be a good fit. And so because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if they settled on a Mike Brown, someone who has shown himself to be a good coach, but certainly not necessarily your number one pick. And, if let's say it's a situation where maybe Rick Brunson just happens to be on Mike Brown's staff, it could be one of those situations where bring Mike Brown in for a couple of years, and then we will shift it over to Rick, who I think at some point will be the Knicks head coach at some point. I really do. He's put in the time. Even if you take his son out of the equation for a minute, Rick has done a lot of the work that should warrant him getting serious consideration for a head coaching job. But the fact is that your son is the face of the franchise. It makes it a little awkward for anyone to talk about you as being the next head coach, because it's like people are like, well, damn, he's kind of been a head coach for like the last couple of years. Ain't he? I mean, who does his son talk to about, issues that he's having? Your daddy. Mm-hmm. And so I think Mike Brown will be a good consolation prize. But to Gary's point, I think the best coach to get them beyond where they've gone under Thibodeau is Mike Malone, because he's literally the only one that you hear being talked about who's done it. He's actually been to the NBA Finals, and he's actually won a championship. And so I think he to me, he makes a lot of sense on lots of levels.
Well, there's so much for us to stay tuned into, including this decision by New York. But of course, Game 6, like we mentioned, is on Thursday. Before we go, for those of you listening to the show, we do want to ask you to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. Next week, we'll recap whatever went down this past week. And for those that are watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the CLNS Media and Celtics All Access YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a ton of other great Celtics content. And one more thing, make sure those notifications are turned on, like we've said, so that you know the moment a new episode like the Big 3 NBA podcast is dropped. So that's all that we have for this week. For Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani Lunis, and this is the Big 3 NBA podcast.